So, yeah, good to meet you. I guess probably the main reason I chose to interview in the band is because time differences are most convenient. But I was also interested in clarifying. We have some information in our database, and Metal Archives has it as well, which may or may not be true. You were originally in Wake from 2011 to 2013 as drummer,
Yep, I
and
was.
then in 2017 came back as bassist.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's accurate information.
It is. It is.
Excellent.
I probably know who put that in Metal Archives, actually.
Very good. I guess the thing is interesting because there's quite a stark difference in how Wake sounded on like the early records like Leeches and False and how they've sounded since you rejoined. Did you feel like there was a shift that had been ongoing when you rejoined the band? Or do you feel like that mentality to expand was there even in the early years you were there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I really do think that when I came back, it was a catalyst for sure, but it wasn't because of me or like me having like a different thing. It was because all of the ideas that were maybe sort of boiling around for at least 2 or 3 years before that, there was now the perfect forum to say like, okay, we're just going to do them now. Like we're not, there's nobody in the room who isn't supporting this anymore. So now it's kind of like, we're just going to go for it. We're going to let the pieces of what we've been working on for the last couple of records, like Misery Rights and Sewing, we're just going to say we don't have anything from those previous albums as canon anymore. And I think a big part of that is we're a band that's really big on in the room. So like what's happening in the room with the group is like the central function of the output. And I think, you know, there had never really been anyone playing bass before who was willing to sort of step up and take as big of a crack as I was. And you know what? It's probably because I spent so many years playing guitar in other bands, playing drums in other bands, playing all kinds of different instruments. And most of the people who played bass and Wake before were kind of like, they were either just bass players or they played just guitar, and they never really had a lot of experience composing a lot of music or doing a lot of things like that. They kind of were like players. They were great players for the most part, but that was what they did. And so the shift really was in the room, right? Like when I played drums, it was like it was fast grinding riffs and drums and vocals. Like you know what it is. You know what I'm talking about. Like it's got the dynamic is it's heavy. That's it. And then in the years when I wasn't in the band, there was a lot of other experimentation, but it never had as many layers as what we wanted to do with Devour and Ruin, which was the output of when I rejoined the band. So yeah, I think that it's not necessarily because of me and having some great idea that I had. It was more just like suddenly the room was in the right place to say, we're going to do this. And yeah, really, since then, we've just had the same ethos for every song we've put together since then, which is a fair few tracks.
Very good. And also, it's been 5 years now you've been in, and there's been quite a few releases coming out. I was watching some of the trying to find other interviews you've done, and I saw one mentioned you'd been working on the material for this album back in 2019. Was there like just a massive glut of productivity for a couple of years, or?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it comes back to what I just spent a huge amount of time talking about is that once that dynamic set, yeah, we just like rolled with it. Like when you have the right group, it's less friction, really, like friction comes in weird places. Like it's not just disagreeing about a part or something or being like, I don't like that riff or something. It's like there's like fundamental problems with discourse that just can lead you to not finish anything. And when you have 5 people where there's no problem like that at all, even when people disagree all the time, you still manage to get way more done. So that's pretty much been the reason why, you know, and also just the fact that, you know, we would have been on tour a lot more in the last 2 years had we been able to, and so, but we didn't want to stop working on what we were working on, so we would just take that effort and push it into new material. So yeah, we started working on Thoughtform Descent pretty much right after we finished Confluence, and right after it was announced, we were right back writing Thoughtform Descent. So yeah, it was yeah, it was 2 or 3 years of just writing and not doing any other part of doing a band.
I guess with a long period like that, particularly whilst you've had other records to kind of promote alongside, has there been like a restlessness having these songs in a advanced state and not being in a position to do anything that's caused you to like tinker with them? Or did you have them in a fairly solid form early on and you were kind of content to sit with them whilst you were promoting Devouring Ruin and promoting Confluence?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's something this band has always had, which is that we're always off onto the next thing before the other thing comes out. That's been like that since I first started playing with Rob and Kyle in 2011. So yeah, I mean, basically it's the latter, what you just said. It's like it's done. We're already off writing something completely new when we're promoting the record that just came out. Like we're always like, that one, it feels way older than it actually is. Like the release date for Thoughtform Descent was last week, and we're already like, these songs feel old to us. Like we don't like to, we never like to play songs for a long time. We always want to be working on something different. It's just this kind of, it's part of that sort of curiosity that comes from our group. Like and that's not new at all. That's just who we are. We've managed to self-select in this band for people who just always have a curiosity for doing. They don't want to play the same thing again. They want to play the same thing a little different, like all the time. So yeah, we basically, it's the latter. We finished it and then sat on it one before it came out, and now we're already like off on another some
Yeah,
adventure.
that's very fair. I kind of get the same with our band. It's like by the time the albums come out, I'm so done with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But yeah, as I hinted at earlier, there's kind of a stark contrast between that very like brief length, straight to the jugular kind of grindcore hardcore of the early years, and you've now got songs that are flirting with or going beyond 10 minutes. I know I read the like anatomy of Wake thing on Heavy Blog, and everyone mentioned Rush Hour, so I'm assuming there's like a prog fight in the band
I lost your audio. Yeah, I can't hear you.
doing
Oh, there you go. Got you back.
10-minute songs. Uh, was that just kind of a conscious feeling like if we're going to grow, that's kind of like an obvious direction to grow as a band, to just expand outwards in terms of how big and epic we can make the songs?
Actually, no, it was pretty natural. It really, in retrospect, though, it's like a really stark difference. It wasn't actually something we did on purpose, for sure, but it definitely happened really fast. Like from, you listen to Misery Rights, and like all the songs are 2 minutes long, just like Sewing, just like False, like all of our previous records, except for one, which is kind of like the end of the album, and it was like 6 minutes long, and it was kind of like, oh, this is like a long, you know, oh, there's like sort of some long progression there. And that was about the time when I joined, because Wake tends to do the same thing, which is the last song on each record will be the last song that got worked on too. So that was the last song that they had been working on right before I joined the band. And they were kind of like, yeah, we just don't want to stop doing that. We had this one, and now we just want to do it all the time. So that was why the next record, Devoured Ruin, had like, yeah, as you said, like a 10-minute song, like 4 songs over 6 minutes, like a lot of longer songs, because it just sort of, it suddenly, that was what we wanted to do, and that's what happened. And yeah, but it was never like, nobody ever said like, I'm tired of these short songs, like let's do some longer songs. It just, I think they just without me, made one that everybody really liked, and then we're just like, let's just keep making them, because that was fun. So yeah, and yeah, today, like as you say, a lot of the stuff on the newer records is yeah, quite a bit longer, and there's very few shorter songs. So I mean, I guess it's stuck.
Yeah, I mean, it works pretty great. I think most of the super long songs are probably my favorite by you. So,
Oh,
but I
cool.
guess there's new skills that are involved in learning to pace out music over that length, and also to play around with the kind of like subtle layering and melodic infusions that you've got going on. How much kind of teething issues did you encounter when you were starting to bleed in these like new approaches into the writing style?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And that I do think was a big part of that was me and the drummer Josh. I've known Josh for since he was like 14. So we got to do something that we've never gotten to do before, which was like have a relationship in the band as a rhythm group. Like as I had always played drums before, and bands I'd played in would tour and play shows with the bands he played drums in. So we both knew each other and well, and had played drums alongside each other, but we'd never gotten to actually work together in a band. And we sort of applied what we wanted to hear directly to sort of how the rhythm parts would flow, which I think had never happened in this band before. And I think that's sort of the beginning of what you're describing is like the teething, where it's like before it's kind of like there's driving melody from the two people playing guitar, and then there's sort of a bass that just kind of does follows the guitars. And me and Josh had kind of said like, well, we're gonna switch it up. No, I'm not gonna do that anymore. I'm gonna do other stuff. And at first it was kind of actually, you know what? At first, there really wasn't a lot of friction. There was a little bit of surprise, and then everybody really liked that. What there nobody was mad, but it was like this isn't how we usually do it. But then I think when we worked on, I think it was maybe the second song we worked on, which I think is called Monuments to Impiety from Devouring Ruin. Um, that was when people started to go, oh, now you're not just going to play the chord we're playing, you're going to play something else, which means we can do whatever we want. And it was kind of just like, oh, that was like a really big change for the dynamic of the band to I like to compare that change for us, maybe giving us a little too much credit, but it reminds me of some of the songs from Nocturnes by Claude Debussy, which is sort of like a chamber music piece that has a lot of good relationships between the cellos and the violins. And it was like the time we made a playlist when Devouring Ruin came out, and I put one on there and no one noticed. So I guess nobody got that except me. but the idea I had was to do stuff like that, was to like, kind of have bass parts moving up and down with their own movement, and then Arjun and Rob can play the riffs and have it shift underneath them. So I guess that's not necessarily teething, but it was a pretty sudden difference. And I think it took us a long time to perfect that, but I don't think anyone was upset. So I guess that's a really long way of saying not that much.
I mean, yeah, it's good for it went smoothly in
should
terms of everyone getting on board.
should give you a
Um,
clue how if you ask a question like that, you're going to get an essay about Claude Debussy from me. So me giving you a 30-minute timeline was I've really given you some trouble here.
don't worry, I think I'm on pace. It's going to be all right. Um, Now, before we talk more about the latest records, I'd like to go back to Confluence just because I loved it when it came out, and I feel like nobody else talked to it because it was only a few months after Devouring Ruin, which had obviously done really well. I was picking up quite a lot of maybe like kind of post-rock, post-metal influences in some of the like lighter tremolos that are weaved in, and some of the ways that, particularly towards the end of Disparity and Chaos, when it's like building and repeating that pattern for like minutes on end. Was that like a conscious influence on that album
Yeah,
from people?
yeah, definitely. I mean, we're all like huge fans of kind of the I guess it would be the early mid era of Hydra Head records. So kind of like the second Pelican record, Yazoo, when he was on Hydra Head Records for a couple of albums, I think 2006 Conqueror, stuff like that. I personally find that song really heavily influenced by some Emperor songs. That's just me, but yes, you're definitely right. There's definitely, like, it wasn't on Hydra Head Records, but songs from Panopticon by ISIS were songs that were kind of like really things that we all share an interest in as band members, that we had done a little bit of on Devouring Ruin, and wanted to say, let's do a lot of on this. Yeah, so yeah, and like for another example would be like the third track on that is like, I mean, I was heavily influenced by Godflesh when I started working on that, because I had a feeling that we could kind of make it work in the context of sort of our the room, and we managed to kind of do that. So yeah, we were I mean, I listened to a lot of that music often, that era, like 2004, 2006 kind of Hydra Head stuff, but I think other people in the band were also sort of interested in that at the time. So yeah, definitely, for sure. I mean, Rosetta, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, really. I thought so, and yeah, it's probably why I like the album so much. In terms of the new one, uh, I'm pretty rubbish at like lyrical interpretation, so I'm kind of interested in terms of concepts or themes going on. Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, oh sure. Yeah, the sort of, Kyle wrote them completely. I didn't write any of the lyrics, so Kyle wrote the lyrics. But I think his high level output is that it's kind of uh, a narrative of a person attempting to move their consciousness into a different form. Uh, in some ways, literally, in the, I think it's it is it Nepalese? Um, there's like a myth of like something called a tulpa, which is like a thought a thought form that you can conjure using only your mind. So that's sort of like a one piece of the narrative, uh, officially, as it's written. That's my high level read of what Kyle has explained to us. But I kind of have my own interpretation, which is that a lot of it sort of, it might be talking about a specific case like that, but I read it as kind of in a meditative way. Like it's lyrics that kind of invite somebody to reconsider the state of their mind, and what you can potentially do to it, and how, and what I think really the intersection between my interpretation and Kyle's exposition of what he wrote was the consequences of what might happen if you try to adjust your consciousness in certain ways, or if you don't pay accurate attention to what you experience, what you can suffer, and that's sort of where the roll into the last song, Translation of Deaths, that was what I think he was doing with that, like Bleeding Eyes of the Watcher into the Translation of Deaths was supposed to reflect the any type of metaphorical consequence for what might happen if you try and change your mind or how you do it. So a lot of it is really, it's a lot more introspective than previous Wake efforts, and that was definitely by design. Kyle really wanted to try and take some of the things he'd been working on, in his own personal works, and bring them into the band. And I think everybody really was happy with it. I think they were keen to see like a different kind of output. So yeah, that's my read. Your mileage may vary.
That sounds great. Obviously, the new album as well has got quite like different artwork to the previous ones. I saw in one of the interviews that it's a first time collaboration with this artist. There continues what like Confluence and now this have got a lot more color in the artwork compared to the fairly kind of monochrome style of the previous albums. Is this potentially like an intentional thing to reflect maybe a more vibrant musical palette, having the color to go along with it, or because it was
Um,
a first time collaboration and they were doing their own thing, it's just kind of happened by accident?
Great question, because the answer is both. Confluence, we chose that piece from that artist because we wanted exactly what you said. We said we want it to be different. We want it to be like that. We want it to be, yeah, we want to show, to visually show a change, just like we wanted it to be with the music. But Thought Form Descent was not. Thought Form Descent, we took a real flyer and we just called Samantha and said, we think you're great. We'll send you, you know, what you need and make us something. And when we came back, we were all like, this is really different. But we looked around and said, does anyone want to like axe this because it's so different? And everybody said no. No, we all liked it. We were all, we just, it was not A, what we were expecting, or B, what we thought we were going to get. But we were really excited by it because it's kind of like she read our minds. Like she definitely did her homework. She listened to all the stuff we sent her. She read all the lyrics. Like she definitely paid attention to it and kind of just her interpretation wound up being what you're describing, really, which I guess was lucky for us because, you know, I don't think we would have been happy if it was kind of like anything closer to sort of what we've put on the covers of our records before, because I think we were kind of looking for something different, but we didn't know how to say it, so we tried to let someone else do it for us, and it worked out like perfectly. Like we you know, no edits, no nothing. We were just like, yeah, this is great. So for Confluence, yes, we definitely said we want this, and for Thought Form Descent, we just got it back, and it wound up just being right. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it works pretty perfectly for it. I think my next question you've kind of answered, basically asking like, with how quickly the music's evolving, are you now at a point where you're maybe gonna like take stock over the progress you've already made, or if you want to push further? But I get the impression you're eager to keep going
Oh
further.
yeah, we can't even help it. So
Yeah. Um, so I think I might be in time. I've got to the last one I had written down. Obviously you had two records that were released in a global pandemic and you didn't get any chance to tour them. And now that you can tour, you've got a new record out. Is there any kind of frustration that you put effort into these albums and they didn't get the, you know, the experience of being brought to life and being shared in the way you would have hoped for? Or are you so focused on the now that you've kind of just resigned to them being a part of history and just want to focus on the present?
I mean, I think it's we were pretty disappointed in the moment. Like it's, I mean, I won't apologize for it. It was pretty disappointing. We were pretty excited for the record, for Devoured Ruin to come out and to tour on it and to just like make it happen. And we were all pretty disappointed that we didn't get to do that. But it didn't take long for us to just leave it behind, though. You know, it really didn't. I mean, as evidenced by the fact that we just finished another record 8 months later. You know, like it was a rough couple of months for sure, because not only could we not do the stuff that was on the calendar, but we also couldn't see each other because we were all not allowed to do that in the country that we're from. So it was just like, it was everything together. It was just like, okay, so we're not even a band anymore. Like, great. But once it kind of was like, yeah, you know, you guys can, the government said we can practice again, and it was just like, and we could do that, where it was just like, no, then it became the latter of what you said, where it's like, that's done, it's the past. Is it what we wanted? No, but that doesn't mean we're going to sit here and worry about it. We're just going to go and do something else. We're just going to keep going, and we don't really do well with slowdown time. Like it tends to cause more problems than it solves. So we tend to like, we try to hit the ground running all the time, and it gives us really short memories, which is a good tool in the context of what happened in 2020. So I
Yeah,
mean, and you know, the truth is that while we didn't get to do all the things we wanted to do, we were still really lucky. Like we still had the you know, the team we had supporting that release was awesome. Like Drew from Translation Loss and Shannon from Perfect World Productions are amazing, and they still just poured their hearts out supporting that record. And I mean, it still went really well. It was a good rollout, and everybody was happy with it. And I mean, so I mean, it wasn't like, yeah, I mean, I guess what you're basically getting at is like, yeah, but you know, what could it have been, right? And that's a fair question. And
Yeah.
and I mean, yeah, I don't think we think about it at all. I think we're just, speaking for everyone in the band, I think we just feel lucky to get the opportunity to do this at the level we're doing it at, and we just go, well, as long as someone will keep letting us do it, we're just going to keep going forward. We're not going to sit there and be like, oh, can someone put that one out again and we can give it another try? Let's see what happens. We're just like, no, it's done, it's passed, forget it. Like that's it. That's I sound like a broken record today because that's kind of the story of our band, is just running forward headlong into whatever's coming next. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think that's a good point to move on, pushing forward to the next opportunity, which is your next meeting in 3 minutes. I think I've done pretty well timing wise.
No, it was amazing. That was great. You crushed it. Yeah. Me, I'm the problem. I can, like I said, you give me an inch and I'll take 10 minutes of your time.
But cheers. Yeah, this was great. I was looking forward to this, and it was a really great discussion.
Yeah, I
Good luck with the rest
appreciate
of
it.
your
Appreciate the
day
great
and
questions.
everything.
Cheers.
Cool.
Have a good one.
You too.